Amanda from Pontes Books here with the Chapter 27 current event for The Prince and the Pauper. For today's current event, we are looking to a modern show that really reminded me, or the events at the end of this chapter really reminded me of. So I pulled an example from there. Our current event today looks at a man by the name of Mark Taylor, who you probably haven't heard of, but you have probably heard of the reason why his name came up here, and that is because he was on the show Undercover Boss. So he is one of the bosses that went on Undercover Boss. So in chapter 27, we see Edward kind of get a taste of his own medicine, if you will. So he is technically supposed to be the ruler of all of England at this time, but right now he's been spending all of his time basically going around undercover, seeing what it's actually like to live as, a peasant or a pauper at the time. Now, he doesn't do that willingly. That's not his choice to go undercover, but that's essentially what's happening. So this chapter in particular really puts him over the edge. And as a result, when he eventually in the story makes it back to his throne, again, sorry, spoiler, if you haven't finished the story yet, he takes what he's learned and he actually does something about it. So this really made me think of this process of Undercover Boss. Now, whether or not it's actually realistic or if they're just doing it for the cameras, debatable, but at the core of the whole show is this concept that a boss of a big company, that makes maybe millions of dollars, is going to go undercover as one of the frontline lower workers and see what things are like. And typically, if you've watched any of the shows, there's usually somebody who has a really heartbreaking story that makes them, really feel like they need to make some changes in the company. And maybe sometimes they do, maybe sometimes they don't. We don't really know what happens beyond when the cameras are recording, or some people do, but the show doesn't necessarily report on that. So Mark Taylor is one of those examples. So taking a look at this moment in The Prince and the Pauper, this is right after the two women have been burned at the stake for being Baptists. And Edward realizes that's kind of on him. Like, he hasn't been there since, his father passed away. Since he's officially been a king, he hasn't been on the throne. But technically, the laws that he sees people being punished by are his responsibility. So this is his reaction to these women being burned. The king's eye burned with passion. He said, "None believe in me, neither wilt thou. But no matter, within the compass of a month thou shalt be free. And more, the laws that have dishonored thee and shamed the English name shall be swept from the statute books. The world is made wrong. Kings should go to school to their own laws at times, and so learn mercy." So in addition to the two women in this chapter, he also meets a bunch of other prisoners that have had a variety of different punishments for seemingly minor crimes. So this is kind of his vow to them that he's going to get back on the throne and he's going to do something about it, and makes the statement that all kings should have to go to school and learn their own laws, experience what their own laws are really like, so that they can be more merciful, which again is this whole idea kind of behind Undercover Boss. So who is Mark Taylor? So he is the managing director of Pickford's, which is a company in Britain, their largest and oldest removal and storage company. And they've been a company for around 400 years. So there's been, the company's been through quite a lot. So he actually started as a trainee with the company in 1986. And, when he first started, he wasn't highly educated. So he kind of worked his way up the ranks within the company. And now he's a millionaire and he's the managing director. So he decided to go on this show, to go undercover, because he was having a hard time recruiting staff to work at kind of the lower level jobs at Pickford. So he wanted to try and, discover what was going on there. And that was why he originally went undercover. So he decided to disguise himself as Dave and, put on a disguise, whatever. And so he goes around and he's working with some in different departments and with different people who work for the company, many of whom have been working there for a long period of time, to kind of get into their head. So throughout his experience, there are a couple things he discovers that are kind of alarming. So one is he discovers the brutal living conditions that some of his employees face when they're working at overnight jobs for his company. So, that's a part of the job that they were working overnight, and they had this truck that they were supposed to sleep in, but there was only one bed in the truck. So then there were usually two guys that would have to, just sleep on the floor of the truck and just tough it out overnight without a bed to sleep in. And that was something that was pretty appalling to him, and he didn't realize was happening. He also discovers that one of his teams had to be temporarily relocated. And when he finds the place that they're relocated, they're actually working out of a shipping container. So again, something that was a surprise to him, something that embarrassed him. And he couldn't believe that this was actually going on at his company. So he decides after this whole experience is over and he kind of reveals who he really is, he reflects on the whole experience and he says, "This experience has taught me we need to have a better level of pay and give them a direct career path. It's not just about the money. It's about praising people, listening. They know they're being looked out for." So just like Edward, he has this, kind of aha moment of realizing that his employees are more than just employees and that he needs to really listen to what's happening to them and be there for them. And that's really how Edward reacts in this situation as well. So again, in our real life example, he does vow to make some changes. So for example, he invests money for a company-wide pay increase. He decides to increase the night out allowance. And then for some of the individual workers that he met, he, gives out some checks and some specific things that they need based on what he learned about them. And this is really what we see Edward do later in the story as well, is he comes back to some of these prisoners and either lets them out of prison or pays their fines or, finds a home for them. He does a number of different things and doesn't just forget about them once he's back to his spot. So hopefully that's the same thing that Mark Taylor is doing as well with his company. Hopefully the experience taught him some lifelong lessons, not just temporary ones, and he'll continue to make the experience for his employees better. So hopefully you learned something. Have a good rest of your day.